Hello, and welcome to the Canyons Are Calling podcast. I'm Cheryl Jocelyn, your host for the show. First of all, I really want to apologize for the crappy audio of the last episode. I'm not really sure what happened, but I will try to make sure that it does not happen in the future. I'm, a year into this and still kind of new at it. So, I think I will pay more attention before I post an episode. I really apologize for that. Shout out to all of my new Patreon members. I pretty much doubled my Patreon membership in February alone, which is really, really awesome. My Patreons get monthly canyon calls where we just chat about canyons, and I'm going to have different guests on from time to time, talk about favorite knots, favorite ropes, favorite gear, favorite canyons, whatever. It's also the only place I post who I have upcoming interviews with. So I give you opportunities to ask them questions, give you a heads up on who is coming on the show. So if that is important to you, or if you feel like this show is valuable to you, you can join me at patreon.com/The Canyons Are Calling. Patreon is just a secure platform where creators like myself are able to get some financial compensation for all of the work that we do in editing and researching and creating all of this show for you. So if you appreciate my time and you would like to donate, there are many options available for you. Secondly, on my website, thecanyonsarecalling.com, I have some stickers, I have some dog tug toys, and I have some pub glasses available for you there. I also have linked to People's Canyon Snacks, and so if you already are shopping on Amazon, it's a way that I can make a little bit of compensation by you buying products that you might already buy or have heard about on the show and are interested in. So that's just another way to give back to the show. If you have an idea for the show and would like to reach out, you can reach out to me at thecanyonsarecalling@gmail.com. I read all of the emails and I am not awesome at getting back to everybody, so I do apologize for that, but do know that I do read everything, and it does make me super happy when you reach out just to say hi or to refer a guest or let me know that you enjoy the show. So if you'd like to do that, thecanyonsarecalling@gmail.com. So I'm going to keep this intro a little bit short and get right into the story. I have a pretty traumatic story today with a lady named Tina. Tina met a fellow on Instagram and decided to do a canyon with him and had a terrible, terrible fall. I just wanted to share the story so that everybody can learn a little bit about what Tina experienced and what she learned from this, and to maybe encourage people to get a little bit more information when they are meeting a person for the first time and doing an extreme sport such as canyoneering. Like Tina says at the end, she really wishes that she would have personally gotten more training and more canyoneering information before she met up with a complete stranger and forever changed her life. So here is my story with Tina. Enjoy. Okay, we are here today with Tina, and she is here to share a tragic story of a day where she fell in a canyon in Moab. But first of all, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself, what you do, and how you got into the outdoors?
Sure. Thank you, first of all, for having me. Yeah, I really appreciate it. This is going to be really fun. It's actually really kind of um, good for me to speak about this story, because the more I talk about it, I feel like the more it kind of helps me get through this whole process. So I appreciate you having me on. Um, but I have so much love for the mountains. I mean, I grew up hiking outside, snowboarding, skiing since I was really, really little. I was born in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and my dad is a lover of the mountains and a runner himself. And so I think I learned most of um, everything through my child years with my father, just being outdoors and camping and things like that. And it's definitely embedded in me. Like, I live in Park City now. My family loves to live in like mountain towns, and I grew up here just skiing and snowboarding, and the mountains are definitely a place that I like to, it's my serenity. It's like my church. I can go there and just get lost and not have to think about my everyday, like, stress of life and things like that. So I've always had so much love for the mountains, and my sports are mainly, snowboarding and trail running. Trail running because I push myself. I can literally just lose myself and get that runner's high. So I love trail running, got into peak climbing back in 2014, heavily in 2018, and tried to do the Wasatch 7. I think I did all of them except for one, Kings Peak. But ran around with an amazing crew of people, met such incredible, communities. And, I think that's another thing that drives me to the mountains is I just love the people and the drive that those people have to be outdoors and push themselves outdoors. So that's really what led me to canyoneering also, is just, after so many years of snowboarding and peak climbing, I just wanted to kind of progress into the next thing that I didn't know, to push myself. And that was canyoneering. I had seen social media, man. That can be a really interesting tool that we use. And I definitely think people push themselves by watching what people do on social media. And that was probably what got me into canyoneering, were the things that I was seeing on social media and my friends who were doing it. Just a new challenge.
Okay. Very cool. So had you been into climbing before at all, or just wanted to jump into canyoneering?
That I'd started climbing a little bit with friends here in Little Cottonwood Canyon, and would go to climbing gyms. So yes, I had done a little bit of climbing in the summers, not a ton, like not where I would call myself an expert, but I would definitely just go with friends who really knew what they were doing and would just kind of follow their lead. So I was just getting into it, like just dabbling into it. And it was an interesting thing for me because it's not just physical, which I'm an enduro athlete. Like I love to push myself, running up mountains, just staying extremely like just high heart rate, just constantly going. But with like climbing, it's such a mental mind game where like I'm afraid of heights in a way, but if I can like get past that and just like focus on what's in front of me, I found it such an interesting challenge. So I really enjoyed doing it and had just started getting into it. It was pretty new for me.
Very cool. I was wondering if maybe you needed to do climbing to get to any of the peaks here in Utah.
Well, the hardest one I did was South Ridge, right across the street from Alta. That was a day I'll never forget. I literally went up there with like 9 other people, and we probably had 3 expert climbers, and you did a little bit of just like scrambling and stuff like that. I felt pretty comfortable in most areas, but I never had used a rope on any of the peaks that I was doing. I did like Nebo and did like Deseret Peak, and a lot of the peaks where it's like you just pretty much scramble, and I'm not using any ropes to do so.
Okay.
I was hoping to maybe get to that level, but yeah.
But then
that didn't happen. Yeah.
Not yet, maybe.
I was going about it in the wrong way.
Maybe it'll just take a little bit longer to get to that goal, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? I think I would hope that most educate themselves a little bit more before they do it. I'm one that was like, let's just go. Let's just throw ourselves into this and then just go. But that's, definitely what led me to this point. So.
Okay. So let's just jump into that day.
Okay.
So you were in Moab. Is that correct?
Yes. So Pritchett Canyon, Moab. Am I saying that correctly? Have you been there before? Have you ever?
I know what the Rock of Ages.
Yeah, Rock of Ages. So there's 4 rappels on that one. And man, what an interesting day. We actually had driven into Moab, and it was like a sandstorm. I have never been in a storm that was so bad, where like my bike's sitting on the back, my mountain bike on a rack, where it was just like, okay, we're gonna have to pull over to the gas stations and put the bikes in the car because it was so bad. So it's like one of those things where it's like, okay, do we turn around? Do we keep going? That weekend there was a lot of rain that was supposed to be coming. But we had talked to somebody in Moab, and they're like, the rain comes and goes. You should just come see where it takes you. So we ended up getting down there, and then it was raining pretty bad that evening, and then the next day it cleared up and it was so beautiful and the weather was so great, but it was supposed to rain that afternoon. So we had been told, like, if we're going to get out in Canyoneer, we had to get out in the morning because they don't want people in the canyons as the rain's coming down, obviously. Um,
Yeah,
so
typically in the summertime, the monsoons come in the afternoons. So usually
yeah,
you
you
can
don't
get
want to
out
get stuck
before.
drowning in one of those.
Right.
But I mean, I've definitely played around Moab, done some mountain biking and some hiking, but I was so excited because I was like, okay, this is gonna be my first time canyoneering. The rain has just cleared up and we're going to take off and just have a great morning. So we get to the Rock of Ages, and there's 4 rappels. The first one, I was actually, let me rewind a little bit. I was with 3 other canyoneers, climbers, one who had a ton of experience and had done this um, path, or just had done these rappels like 50 times, he had said, like just super experienced. And then I went out with a girlfriend of mine and then his roommate, who was another girl. And each time we did a rappel, one of the girls would go first. So I'm a little bit afraid of heights. So on the first one, I think that one's the 200-foot rappel. That was a mind game, but we were all super excited. The first girl went, and then we didn't have any problems. There was a little bit, the second girl went, and then there was a little bit of a problem where the rope kind of got caught underneath her. They were brand new ropes that we were using, and it kind of got caught underneath her as she was rappelling down, and she had to like untangle the rope a little bit, which was an interesting
Hmm.
thing. And then I went and we got down the first rappel pretty easily, and I was pretty stoked. I was like, oh my god, I can't believe I just did that. And I'm one of those people that, like, they're like, you got to look around, like, look where you're at. And I'm like, I'm only staring at the rock in front of me and this rope, and I'm just going to make it down, right? So that's where my focus was. And then the second one went just as well, and then the third one was the smaller one, and we're over here getting stoked. We're like, okay, like, this turned out to be an incredible day. Then we come up on the very last rappel, and this is a 100-foot rappel, and it's about a football field away from the freeway, I would say, which is actually I'm only saying that because that turns out to be a really good thing at the end of the story. But um, as we were rappelling, I was the last girl to go first, if that makes sense. So both of the other 2 girls had already gone, and I was like, okay, I guess I'll go first. Like, I'm going to get this done in like 10 minutes. I'm going to be done. I'm not going to think about anything. I'm going to be at the fireplace, like having a cold beer and, the fire pit, and just enjoying the rest of the evening, right? We always do our adventures in the day to have that beer at the very end. I mean, I do, at
Yes,
least.
me too.
Um, so so what had happened is there was this interesting, like, rock, like this lip, and I sat on this lip, and then the guy that took us out had to make a decision whether to use an anchor system that sat on the rock that was on the ground, like kind of on the rock that, like it was on the ground, versus an anchor system that was a newer anchor system that sat on a rock that was like higher up, maybe about 10 feet higher up on another rock. And he sat there for about 10 minutes trying to decide. And here I am, not even thinking about him, like, trying to make this decision, but I was just like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm going to go first. I'm just like talking myself up. I can do this. These other 2 girls just did it. I'm going to be over this in just a minute. He had decided to use the anchor system on the rock that sat above the anchor system that was on the ground. And I'm saying the ground, but I mean like the rock that we were going to start belaying off of. I hope I'm saying this correctly.
Yeah.
Which actually had about 10 feet on both sides. So like, if like, for instance, how can I say this? So he put the rope through the anchor system, and then there was about 10 feet on both sides that I don't think were accounted for as we were rappelling. This just might be one of the reasons why the rope ended up falling short. Right. So,
Because now you're
um,
20 feet shorter on rope.
yes,
Okay,
exactly.
that
And
makes
the
sense.
rope, as far as, I mean, the ropes were brand new. So I hadn't even looked at the ropes, like I'm like basically having him tie the knots at this point, right? And making sure, like, checking with everybody once the knot was tied. Can't even tie my own knot at this point. So he throws down one side of the rope to the bottom, And then he puts the rope through the anchor system and then into like the whole rope's in a backpack. So like maybe I'm saying that incorrectly. So the rope's in a backpack and then he puts the other side of the rope through the anchor system and that drops to the bottom. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yep.
Okay. And then he's like, okay, you ready? You're going to go first. So I start rappelling, and this certain section doesn't have a wall. So we're free falling. And so I start rappelling down, and I'm pulling this rope from the backpack and then kind of just pulling my, using the stopper. I don't know. How do I say this? I'm using my hand as a stopper to kind of progress down the rope.
Okay. To make it go slower.
I'm not a climber, obviously, you can tell. So I get to one point and the last thing I remember is this gentleman yelling at me and saying, "Hey, what kind of beer are you going to have when you get to the bottom?" And I'd probably been rappelling for maybe two minutes at that point, 2.5 minutes. And I was like, "Okay, you can't yell that yet. I'm not even close to the bottom." And I'm screaming. I just yell up at him and say that. That's like the last thing I remember. And then right after that, this rope, in slow motion, I feel like I can see it below my waist that it's the bottom of the rope. I had pulled the bottom of the rope out of the backpack. I'm looking down. I yell up to them and I say, "Hey, I don't think this is right. I've got the bottom of the rope in my hand. Is this correct? This doesn't feel right." And the gentleman yells down at me and he goes, "No, you're doing it right." And then right after, he kind of caught on to what I was saying or something. He goes, "No, that is so wrong. That is so wrong." And then out of nowhere, everything inside of me, I couldn't even think twice. I just let go of the rope and I dropped about 20 to 25 feet. And at that point I was just in shock, just blown away that that had happened. As I was falling, I fell straight onto both of my feet, just straight down. And I remember seeing my foot in a figure four, if you were to bend your knee and put your foot resting on your straight leg. That's what that looked like as I looked down, but I wasn't bent at my knee. I was actually bent between my knee and my foot. So compound fractures. So fibia, tibia through the leg. And then but I didn't realize that I had bones hanging out of my legs at that point. So I'm hit the ground and I'm hanging out there. I'm freaking out, not hanging out. I am freaking out, screaming. And he comes down right after me, extremely fast. That boy flies down that rope and he's just like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Well, I'm not okay, obviously." And he puts his coat over me and he's like, "I've got to go get help." And so he runs off to go get help. And then his roommate came down right after him. And she is just a wreck. I mean, she's so she's screaming herself and she's just it was just messy. And I was like, "Listen, you have to calm down because I'm going through this right now and I'm feeding off of your energy." And I listened to that video for the first time at my year anniversary of this accident, and my screams were that horror and terror was it brought chills. It was disgusting. It's like death, right? I listened back to it and I was like, this is it just sounds like I've never heard anything like it before. I mean, if anything, that's right before somebody dies. So she's freaking out. I'm like, "Can you please calm down? I just need you to calm down so that I can just kind of get through this myself." So anyways, about an hour and 40 minutes go by. And I've got another girlfriend at the top of the rappel who is too afraid to come down. So she gets stuck at the very top. They send a life flight, but they can't get to me because I'm so buried into the canyon. And so they have to send search and rescue from both sides. So they ended up sending them from the street to where I was located. And then also not from the street, but there's this big rocky, dirt road that you kind of have to hike up to even get to this location. So they send search and rescue in from that direction. And then they also send them in from the other side. And so I'm waiting about an hour and 40 minutes, holding myself up with one hand, because here I am thinking "Oh, I just broke my ankles and maybe cracked my pelvis. I don't know." But it felt like there was a rock that I was sitting on that was just kind of just protruding into my pelvis. So I held myself up for an hour and 40 minutes. And here I'm like, okay, I just broke my ankles. This is a crappy situation. I'm going to get out of here. It's going to be fine. And you just start thinking at that moment, like, okay, you take baby steps. It's like, okay, if I can get to the hospital, if I can get to that white bed in Moab, like at the clinic, I'm going to be okay. And then if I can get there to the hospital bed at the University of Utah, I'm going to make it through this thing. So I just started thinking in these like sections, and setting like these little goals. But paramedics come and they're like, they yell up to the girl who's sitting next to me and they say, hey, listen, like, is she losing a lot of blood? And the girl goes, no, but her bones are sticking out of her legs. And I'm just like, that's the first time I hear this. And I'm just like, oh my goodness. Like, this is bad. This is like worse than I thought. Like, okay, so I'm in so much pain. The pain just takes over. It just feels like fire from the waist down. Paramedics comes up to me and he goes, all right. He's like, we are going to have to pop your bones back into place to get you onto the stretcher, because we've got to get you out of here. And there's just a little section they were going to have to rappel me down still. So they're like, we're going to shoot you with 2 ketamine shots. They're horse tranquilizers. And they're like, it's going to hurt like a bitch, but you're not going to remember any of this. And that's exactly what happened. Like, I remember the sound of the cracking, like the pop back in, and my scream. I'll never forget that scream. And then immediately after, I went to outer space. Like, ketamine is next level. Like, I felt like I was in a Tetris game. The things that I was saying to the people that were carrying me out is so funny. Like, I was told that I was telling them, like, I'm going to take you guys all to dinner. We're going to go rollerblading together. Like, I was just saying random stuff. But as I was being carried out, I just remember hearing like voices, like in the background. It almost sounded like they were just further down the canyon. I just remember seeing like lights that were, again, like, it just seemed like they were in the background, and they were all obviously right next to me. They were carrying me on a stretcher. But yeah, it was extremely intense. And then I had to get into a 4-wheeler that then took me to an ambulance that then took me to the Moab hospital. And then being at the Moab hospital is a story in itself, because I think most of my PTSD came from the hospital, because I don't know if it was the drugs or what. I feel like I had come down from the drugs, but a lot of the people that were working on me at that time didn't seem like they had a lot of knowledge on how to work like the X-ray machine, and like doctors were kind of arguing with the nurses. And here I am, like, losing my shit at this point, just like horrified. And I said, do not touch me. You're going to put me in an ambulance and not at this time. I thought I was going to get life flighted, but the life flight wasn't available at that time. So they put me in an ambulance and got me to the University of Utah hospital. But at that time, the doctors were trying to talk me into staying at the Moab hospital to get surgeries. I'd be done with surgeries in 3 days, in and out. I went to the University of Utah hospital and I was there for literally a month, and then in rehab after that for another month. So it was like, wow, being able to, like, a lot of people tell me, they're like, the fact that you advocated for yourself at that very moment, like being on drugs, like, is mind blowing. And I don't know, I was just kind of following my intuition throughout this whole thing, because it's like fight or flight at that point, right?
Right. Wow.
So intense.
What all happened besides the broken femurs?
So, okay. So, I had a broken fibula and tibia,
right.
Shattered ankle, shattered heel. So my calcaneus shattered on my right foot. Fib and tib was on my left foot, and my ankle on my left leg. Sorry, fib and tib, leg, ankle on the left side. And then my pelvis broke in 2 places. So it just like kind of, I hit it. So what had happened is, when I fell to the ground, I fell straight on my feet, which doctors and even climbers that I've talked to now have said, it is a miracle that you were not rappelling with your feet on a wall, because I would have fallen straight down and landed on my rear end and then spine and all of that. But I ended up landing on my 2 feet directly, and I landed so hard that it cannonbolted me back. And I think the backpack saved my spine. So I ended up hitting a rock at that point because of the impact, and it pushed my pelvis forward. So I broke my pelvis in 2 places. So basically, I typically say, I'm like, I was just broken from the waist down. And in the hospital, I mean, I was there for 30 days, and I remember, like, waking up at the University of Utah hospital. It was the middle of the night and my parents were there, and I'm just sitting there like, how did I even, like, I'm here, I'm in a lot of pain. I know that I had fallen. But the last thing I remembered was like getting into an ambulance at the Moab hospital or Moab clinic. And then all of a sudden I'm just at U of U and my parents are there. And my mom's just like, they're just a mess. And they're like, we're going to meet you up in the room and the doctors are going to tell us what's going on. And there was a nurse that was right next to us in the waiting area, like where I was on the stretcher. And they're like, no, you guys can't come. Your parents can't come up there. This is because of COVID restrictions. I didn't have anybody with me for, 2 months, a month while I was in the hospital. And then my mom ended up getting herself into the rehab facility to be with me. But that's another part of the story. So just being at the hospital and being like, close to that white bed, I was just like, okay, I'm okay. And the doctor came out and he's like, you're going to be able to walk again. It's like, this is going to be a rough journey, but you're going to be able to walk again. And so that was the moment that I was like, we gotta get through this. I gotta get through this. Like, I'm gonna walk again. And so from that moment on, it's like my whole life shifted, and my focus for the last almost 2 years now has been just focusing on walking and getting back to the sports that I love. Yeah, it's been a wild journey. I wouldn't put this on anyone. I mean, the pain that you just go through, it's excruciating. You can't even explain it. Like, I couldn't have nerve blockers in the hospital because they were too afraid that on my left leg, if I had a nerve block, it would stop the flow of the blood and then they would have to amputate at that point. So they're just like, we can't give you a nerve block. So I had to go through, after waking up from the surgery, just that post-surgery pain. That pain put laying in that canyon to shame. I mean, that initial fall to shame. And I went through that 3 times in the first month. So it was intense.
Oh my gosh.
It was so intense.
I can't even imagine. And then not being able to have family and friends there to distract you, because
no, yeah, you're
important.
Well, thank God for social media, like FaceTime and all of that, because my mom was on FaceTime with me probably 24 hours a day. Like, she was just telling me, like, what the future holds. And I had friends do a GoFundMe, which was incredible, and sending flowers and notes and emails and books. And it was just like that support system. There's honestly, that's what got me through this whole thing, was the people around me. And it was, really I'm cool. so thankful for that. But it was just, man, your head goes to such a different place. And I look back on it now and I'm still living in it, just because I'm still going through my recovery. But looking back to where I was at, I can't believe I made it through that. It was intense. I came home after 2 months and was in a wheelchair for about another month and a half before I was able to begin trying to walk. And I would just scoot around the house on my butt. So I had 2 huge casts on and then boots. And so I would just like push myself around the house. I'd sit on a pillow and scoot along the floor to get from point A to point B. And I mean, I have videos of that, and I'm just like, wow, if I made it through that, man, I'm going to get through anything.
Yeah, that's amazing. I want to rewind just a little bit to talk about the fall.
Sure.
So you were with just some friends that were experienced, right?
Yeah. So, well, the gentleman we went out with, he had said he was very experienced, and he had done all of those just sections and had rappelled those sections so many times. He's like, I'd been out with friends, I've gone out with family, like I take people here all the time. And it was just so nonchalant, like, hey, you want to go try canyoneering? Like, I've got all the equipment. Like, if you want to come, I'm taking my roommate out. You and your friend are welcome to join us. And yeah, I took him up on it. I was like, absolutely. This sounds amazing. I'm going to throw myself into this.
Right.
Yeah.
So when the other 2 girls had gone first on the other 2 rappels, did they rappel the same way that you did, where he had thrown the one side down and then they were rappelling out of the backpack?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm trying to remember.
I only asked because
not on the first
way.
Well, no, not on the first one, because I feel like that that first one was the 200-foot rappel, and I don't believe she was pulling the rope from a backpack at that point. And then the like, to be honest, I couldn't remember exactly, but I don't think on the first one that there was a backpack being used. The other two, I couldn't tell you. I don't really remember that.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I've talked to a few climbers and people after the fact who have seen photos of that day, just through my Instagram. And a lot of people have come back to me with so many questions because they obviously want to educate themselves and others to not have the same thing happen.
Exactly.
But I don't know enough about it. I wish I did. I haven't had a chance to come to be able to ask those questions yet to the person who took us out. I'm just not ready for that. So,
Right.
but I have a lot of questions, but that was the number one thing. A lot of people were like, you guys weren't wearing helmets. We didn't have helmets on. And I think,
no.
and that's like something you're like, oh my gosh, that's the first thing you think of. But I think at that point for me, I can't speak for the other two girls. I had so much adrenaline and excitement that I didn't even think about it. I wasn't even thinking about a helmet. Like, that's how stupid it was. That's how stupid,
No,
I was.
honestly, like in the beginning of my canyoneering career, I didn't wear a helmet. I was getting taught how to canyoneer by climbers. And for some reason, climbers don't wear helmets, a lot of them. And I had been canyoneering for about 6 months. My mom gave me a helmet for Christmas.
Did you
And
start wearing it? Did you
yeah,
start wearing it? Okay.
there's
I remember when
pictures of me like in the early stages where I'll have like I'm on rappel with my helmet clipped to my side. I'm like, well, at least I brought it. But now I'm a helmet Nazi. I feel like, I mean, if you have something worth protecting, you should protect your head for sure.
Sure. I mean, yeah, I remember my mom would give us helmets when we were kids, and we'd go up to the mountain, snowboard and ski, and we'd go ditch them in the lockers. And here I am thinking, man, you were just a stupid kid, and you were a stupid adult too, because I mean, I didn't learn my lesson. Obviously, I've been riding without helmets for a while, and then I got into touring and started, thinking like, okay, helmet's probably a better idea.
It's a good thing you didn't hit your head.
Yeah. It's a miracle. It is an absolute miracle that I didn't hit my spine or my head. I don't know why this all happened, because I have so much love for sports outdoors and the community outdoors. And it's like, how can something that you love so much be stripped from you? Like I see myself in a place of like, this is the best person that Tina can be. This is the best person that I am when I'm in those communities. I'm outside, I'm pushing myself, and it got stripped. It got taken away from me so quickly. And sorry if I start tearing up. It's just with the snap of your finger, it's like life is so fragile. And the thing that I love the most was stripped from me. And I'm working so hard to get back to that place of being able to enjoy the sports I love. If I didn't have that love for the mountains, I don't know that I'd be where I'm at right now today in walking and mountain biking. I think that the mountains are my drive. It's my motivation. And it's like, I'm not going to quit until I've at least tried everything to get back to the sports that I love. And it might look different, and that's fine. But whatever that motivation, that drive, that love for the mountains has gotten me where I am right now. And doctors and my surgeons are just like, it is mind blowing that you've come this far, because there's so many people who've been in these shoes and they are in wheelchairs, or they, they're not able to walk, or, things like that. And I just have it in my head that like my passion and what the mountains do for me is what's getting me back to just being stronger. But as like I focus so much on my recovery, I'm also evolving as a person as well. So
yeah,
it's been a wild ride.
Is it easier for you to ride a mountain bike now than it is to hike?
I hated mountain biking. I am not a mountain biker. I have been forced into mountain biking, but man, I push myself as hard as I can running up mountains. That mountain biking came to me naturally, I guess you can say. The more I did it, I progressed really quickly, which is actually like really scary, because I feel like mountain biking is a sport that you can really hurt yourself, right? And so I had bought a bike right before my accident. I mean, that is just, it was like serendipity. I don't know, like right before my accident. And I had bought it just because a lot of friends were mountain biking and I just wanted to try something new, just like canyoneering. And the accident happened. And then after, I started walking probably about 3 months later, I started to learn how to walk again. And then that following summer, so it was last summer, 2020 summer, I had just started getting back on a mountain bike, and mountain biking's easier for me because obviously walking, I can barely make 2 miles, right? But my mountain bike, I can go distances as long as 15 miles. So I got aggressive on a mountain bike, fell off the bike, broke another couple fingers. My surgeon is just like, Tina, you are keeping me in business at this point. And I'm like, it's a mosquito bite in comparison to what I've been through. But no, I to answer your question, it is a lot easier. I mean, I can ride, it doesn't affect me. And sometimes I have a little bit of pain from my pelvis. But no, it doesn't really cause me too much pain, and I'm getting stronger. And the goal is to not have as much pain as I have while I walk. And so I made the decision about 6 months ago to get the hardware removed, as much of it as possible. And there's one plate. So I got, to look at this bag full of hardware. Did you know they actually, when surgeons take out hardware, they ask you, they say, do you want to keep this? Yeah. I was like, well, hell yeah, that's interesting. This stuff has been inside my body. But the amount of hardware that came out, I haven't weighed it. I actually should weigh it, but I would guess 1.5 pounds for sure. I mean, so much plates and screws, and maybe 1 pound. Maybe I'm over exaggerating. There's one plate that's left right now in my left leg. And they had to keep it in because my bone mass hasn't grown back enough to keep that leg stable and strong. So they're going to keep it in. But over the last 12 weeks, I've gotten everything out. So I am, again, kind of starting over in a way. My body is not facing the trauma, but I'm having to heal again from just the incisions, and my body is having to get stronger. My pelvis is causing me more problems than I think it has since the accident. And I think it's just because it doesn't have those screws in there and it's not used, I'm having to build that strength again.
Yeah.
But the goal is just to keep moving forward and exploring new ways to try to relieve some of this pain, and just try to, I always ask the higher ups, I'm like, God, higher up, universe, please just let me get to like 15 miles a day, like just one day out of a month, just 15 miles. Like I want to be able to see those peaks again. That's what I'm working towards. So, and I don't need to run, I can walk it, but I'm just like, give that back to me, please.
Right. That's a great goal. A great goal. Do you see yourself ever wanting to go canyoneering again?
Yeah. So, I mean, yes, I say that like, yeah, let's get on it. Let's do it tomorrow. No, that's not the case. I actually went to Costa Rica, and I had crutches that I used to like get through the jungle. This is a funny story because I went with a buddy of mine and we wanted to go do an adventure, and I'm very limited to what I can do. We wanted to go either rent bikes or like go and do some kayaking or some river rafting. All of them were booked because we wait till the last minute, like the kind of idiots we are. And we get there, and the last thing he said to me the night before, he goes, well, there is rappelling left. And I was like, oh my gosh. My mom had told him before we left, she was like, if you allow her, because she will want to put herself in any position where she's going to hurt herself, I'm going to kill you, Bryce. And it's so funny because he told me that after the fact, but we ended up booking rappelling, and I rappelled in Costa Rica. And I felt so, so safe because it's like where they take hundreds and hundreds of tourists. It was at, where was it? What is that place called? Oh my gosh. Oh, it's so beautiful. I'm going to remember it in a minute. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but a lot of people know this place. But it was the fact that it wasn't Red Rocks made it a little bit easier for me. The fact that I had 2 guys on the top, 2 guys on the bottom, I just felt really safe. So fast forward, I get back. This was actually probably about 3 months ago from today. And I had a buddy who knows somebody here who is a guide and literally takes people out to the Red Rocks and rappels, and is just really, really safe, knows his stuff. And he's just like, would you like to go? Like they would love to take you out. They heard your story. And I was actually leaving town, so that couldn't happen. But as I was thinking about it, I I mean, I was sweaty. My hands just got all like sweaty. I was so nervous just thinking about it. I will eventually get to it, I think. It's just in gyms I'm back in a harness, but the Red Rocks are going to be next level for me. And I think I want to get to a point where I can actually walk easier before I ever get into a harness, climbing
Sure, that
again on the Red Rocks.
PTSD will be really hard to.
Oh, it's
I'm
gonna
happy to
be,
hear that you went in Costa Rica, though. That's exciting.
yeah, La Fortuna. Thank you. I knew it was gonna come back to me. La Fortuna waterfalls. They've got like these. It's pretty well known, and it's they were just these beautiful waterfalls, and the rocks were black with like moss, green moss, and I was like, it just didn't. It was easier for me for some reason because it wasn't the Red Rocks.
Yeah.
I mean, I mountain bike. I was in St. George just recently mountain biking and looking over like an edge, and I had PTSD just like standing too close to that edge, like looking over the edge at the Red Rocks. It was like just again that feeling just came back, and I haven't suffered from a lot of PTSD, thankfully, not that I know of. I'm doing a lot of self-work right now because man, when you don't have your coping mechanisms and you can't get out and like snowboard or run to deal with the stress, that
Right.
stuff comes up and you got to learn some new ways to deal with it.
Right. That's therapy for so many of us. So when that's
Uh,
gone, what do you do?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a real challenge. I think mentally this has been harder for me than it has physically because, almost loss of identity. You just I've had to find new friends, and it's not because, friendships were lost. It's just that I can't keep up with the friends that I used to snowboard with or hike with. And, I found a new set. There's been a lot of great opportunities and new people I've met through this whole journey as well. But your life just completely gets thrown off its trajectory. It's just like, where are we going now? And it's been a battle mentally, but I've had a really great support team. So my only suggestion to everybody is like, if you get out there and you start any extreme sports, know what you're doing. Do not put your life in the hands of somebody else. Don't do it. Don't.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, do you have any, like, what would you do differently for that day?
You honestly, I wish that I had some better education around it. I wish that I would have been a little bit more experienced. Maybe done some research as to who the person was taking us out. Like, go with a licensed guide. Nothing against the individual that took us out. This is entirely my fault for not doing my homework, not doing my research on what I was getting myself into. But I was so excited. I mean, I was doing what everybody else does. Like, I think that, you learn extreme sports sometimes from the people who are experienced around you, but sometimes those aren't the best people to be learning from. Even though they're incredible, it's like, go to somebody who's got a license, like that knows, they've had the education around it, because it's too scary. And if you look at even like backcountry snowboarding, like people die so often, like avalanches, things like that. And it's not your life, it's their life that's in your hands. So that's my biggest, if I could do it differently, I wish that I would have taken some courses to better understand what it was I was doing and not just did it because it was extreme and the cool thing to do. I think social media plays a big role in like getting people outdoors, and that's awesome. But like, you can't just jump into it. You're going to learn the hard way if you do.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I myself, I take friends out all the time. I take newbies out all the time. I was a guide for a while.
So let me ask you.
It still just boggles my mind that you were rappelling out of a backpack on your first time. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I would really like to look at, like, see the pictures of, if you could share those with me.
Absolutely.
Because I would love to see those and see like what was going on.
I would love your feedback on that too, to be honest. I kind of, people ask me about this all the time and I just can't speak to it as eloquently as somebody,
Right.
who's experienced in it, because I'm not experienced in it. And I would love the feedback, because I mean, that's another reason. It's like, I just didn't do my homework because maybe the person that took us out just wasn't as experienced as he said, or maybe I'm saying it incorrectly, but I was pulling a rope from a backpack and I was the first person to go, which everyone who had seen those photos were like, you were inexperienced and you were going first. That's number one. You should not have been going first. So,
especially in an overhanging rappel where you're like free hanging.
Yeah.
I mean, you need a belay on that. I don't know. So many
Yeah.
things.
I will
Everything
happily send you
different,
the
but
photos. Yeah, it's just a crazy experience that took me in a direction that was least expected. Um, I don't
yeah.
know.
Well,
I'm waiting for that aha moment that's like, oh, this is why this happened. I'm hoping that that day
so
comes.
you could share your story here on our podcast and
Yeah.
nobody else has to get this happen to them.
Yes, yes. Oh my gosh, you guys.
I mean,
Don't
unfortunately, you had to do
don't
that for
follow in
us.
these shoes. Like, yeah, follow the people who definitely have experience. My question to you, I mean, it sounds like you've been a guide, you take friends out. Like, do you have I know you have to get certain certs for, backcountry snowboarding, backcountry skiing. What does that actually look like for rock climbing? Like, do you have certain levels of
So
certifications you have to get?
for
Because I
guiding,
know,
not really. Each company does it differently. So like Zion Adventure Company will train their own guides. I did get a wilderness first responder, so I had some like wilderness rescue knowledge and first aid information and things like that. And now there's an organization. I haven't been guiding for about 7 years. But now there's an organization called ACA, American Canyoneering Association, and they do a lot of training. And they do have levels like aspirant, leader 1, leader 2, where you can do testing, you can do training, you can do and get certificates. And so I think more of the guide companies are moving toward people going through programs like that. I know Uber Adventures also has guide training programs.
yeah,
Um,
I've done a little bit of research and I saw through the University of Utah, they do a course, a full
Yeah,
course
Bruce
on
Shapiro,
it.
I think, teaches there,
Yes.
and they have a pretty good program.
And then the front climbing gym seems to do levels, certain levels. So I'm about to walk down that path. Like, I want to learn it because I want to understand what I did wrong. To be
Yeah,
honest, like I want to just educate myself. And now I'm starting to get back into the gyms and back into the climbing gyms. And my goal is to get whatever levels I can, just to figure out what went wrong on my own. And then one day there will be a conversation around this with the person that took us out.
yeah.
It's just too heavy for me right now. I want to heal. I want to recover just a little bit more.
There's also up in the Salt Lake area, there's Canyoneering Chicks, and they do a lot of training with just women only, which is pretty cool.
Awesome. I'm writing that. I'm writing that down right now. See
Yeah,
that?
and
I
it's
think that's
Bruce's
going to be like,
wife, Charlene, that does most of the Canyoneering Chick stuff.
Charlene is her name.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely would love to look into it. If I go out, like, I could see myself like going out to the Red Rocks or going out outside climbing again. I'll definitely go in a direction like that. It's just really sad because everybody's like, rappelling is actually one of the safest sports you can do. In a way, it's just
Yeah.
the number one cause of death is not having a stopper knot, and that's what happened. There was no stopper knots on the end of these ropes, and I just slid right off. So
Yeah.
it's crazy how fast it happened. It's so, like, life is just so fragile. Like, I mean, you can walk outside and get hit by a car, but like, you just don't expect this kind of thing. You just don't, and it changes your life. So it's definitely taught me to, like, I will get back out there. I will still be on my bike. I will get back out there and hopefully one day start snowboarding again, get back country, but I will be doing it in a way that, like, I am certified and I have education around it, and I'll have fun doing it. I kind of am the type of person where it's just like, I'm so extreme in my career and my sports and just like friendships and social outlets that I kind of just wanted to skip that part because I was like, whatever, like, that's just too slow for me. I don't want to go sit and learn how to do this. I'm going to go out there and actually do it hands-on, because that's how I learn.
Right.
Yeah, girl, you learn the hard way. So,
Man.
yeah, thank you for allowing me to talk about this. It really helps the recovery process. It's just been insane.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I was glad that you would share your story.
Absolutely.
I mean, some people are
Absolutely.
like, no, I don't want to look like an idiot, but there's so many things that we can all learn from it. So
Sure. And I learned from you as well. I mean, before we got on this, before we did the podcast, I was sitting there asking you, like, am I saying this correctly? Because I am so inexperienced. And yeah, I learn from everybody around me. It's just, I want to learn the right way and maybe not take the first person who wants to take me out and like jump all over that adventure. But yeah, so
too
that's
bad
the
that's hindsight.
story.
Well, okay. Well, I just have a few questions that I ask everybody at the end of the podcast.
Okay.
First of all, you're not a super canyoneer, so we'll change this to mountains. What is your favorite mountain snack?
Mountain snack. Oh my gosh. I would say beef jerky. I love beef jerky. I like those little, I mean, I don't even know what they're called, but yeah, I would just say beef jerky. I always have beef jerky. And you know what? The people that I used to hike with, I got to give a shout out to Noah because I hope he listens to this. Yeah, the people that bring up like the meat from Beltex and like the, charcuterie board at the top of the mountain. There are those people. I see it even happen on social media in the winter when people are touring. I got it a lot in the summer because I hiked with a really cool buddy who would always bring this just like decadent spread of like cheese and crackers and beers. I would be like, heck yes, this is why I'm hiking. I'm
I
like,
actually
I'm
just got
hiking.
like this little tiny bamboo cutting board, and I was like, that'd be perfect for backpacking.
I
Like, who's
love
gonna bring
it.
a little cutting board backpacking? But whatever.
Yes, yes. Because you always want to
For
like,
the
right?
cheese.
You work for the up, right? You work for the down. So it's like you're just constantly working your way up. If I've got that charcuterie board at the end of this and that beer at the top of the mountain, let's do this. Let's go.
I'm all about the after canyon beers.
Let me ask you what yours is. What's your favorite snack?
Well, lately I found the O Snap pickles. I really like those. It's just like a really salty, enjoyable snack. And cheese, I'm always bringing hiking cheese, which is
What about the
weird.
little gel, like those little gel, the salt? What are those little? Oh my gosh, what are they called? I'm having a brain fart. Runners and bikers actually eat
The
them all
goo
the.
things,
Yeah, the little
I feel
gel
like
like
it's really
gummies.
sugary, and I try not
Yeah,
to eat sugar.
I
But
think they
what I
taste
do,
so
I have
good.
these like they're like rice cruncher roller things. My grandson got me addicted to them, but those are my like go-to sugar snack, which is
Rice.
really
Say that again. I'm noting it.
they're
Rice,
crunchy rollers.
crunchy
It's just like a
rollers.
rice snack. I get them at Costco. They're so
Awesome.
good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always trying to find stuff that's just gonna fill me up. So it's like the protein and yeah,
Mhm.
rice cakes would be
Oh,
good
I
or
just
rice.
found Kate's Real Food bars too when we were in Glacier. Those are really good.
What is
They're
it?
It's Kate Real Food bars. So they're
Okay.
kind of like Cliff bars, but they're like real food.
Oh, I'm
So
trying that. I
they're
went
so
to Glacier
good.
and I drove through Glacier when I was a little kid, when I was super, super young, traveling from Canada to the US in a U-Haul when I was really, really young. But I was actually able to go back to Glacier this past summer and it was incredible. I mean, it was so beautiful. And it was again another mind game because it's like I want to go do those hikes and get to the top of these mountains. And now I'm having to be like, I'm recreating like the rest of the people that are driving around in their cars. And it was so
Right.
hard for me. And I'm like, one day I'm going to go back to Glacier again and I'm going to be able to do these like massive hikes, 15 miles up and like run
Yeah.
into the bears and all the like,
Do Grinnell Glacier when you go and can actually
Gren-
hike. Grinnell Glacier
Grinnell.
was a fantastic hike.
How long is that hike? Do you
I don't
remember?
remember. I want to say maybe 5 to 8 miles, but it
That
was
place is so
fantastic.
cool.
We saw moose swim all the way across the lake, which I didn't even know moose could swim that far. But it was a mom and the baby, and we were like up high looking at it down below, but it was so incredible. We didn't
Yeah,
see
that
bears, but we saw goats and the moose and
it's
all the
so
things.
beautiful. So, so beautiful up there. I love Glacier. I definitely want to experience though outside of the car.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
just so hard. I'm like, I'm going to go back to all these beautiful places and be able to hike them. But right now, I'm still going forward with it. I'm just driving around in the car and going to the outlook, like the little overlook points.
Yeah. It's gotta be a good distraction though, even if it's frustrating. It
It's
gives you
so
like a
frustrating.
goal for the future.
It's so frustrating when life just like slows you down and you're sitting looking at this beautiful place and it's like there's a street right behind, there's that big, what is that, sunny road?
Going to the Sun Road.
Yeah, yeah. I like massive cars behind me, but this is gorgeous.
Right? Like, who cares? I'm taking it in.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Wow. Um, do you have any safety advice you would like to leave our listeners with?
The safety advice I think we talked about, a little bit throughout, just a lot
Yeah.
throughout this last hour. Just get your own education, get knowledge about what you're doing, wear helmets, just do
Yes.
it. Wear a helmet. If you fall off that rope, man, that's going to be one of the things that's going to save you. So
Yeah.
that is interesting though. Why is it that climbers don't wear? That is interesting to me. Like, why do climbers not wear helmets?
I don't know. I think
Huh.
a few like more are getting into it, but it's my experience that the climbing friends I know don't wear helmets. But like I'll have climbing friends that are canyoneering friends and they'll wear
Uh-huh.
helmets in the canyon and then I see them climbing and they're not wearing a helmet. I'm like, I don't understand. Rocks can still fall. You can slide sideways into the wall. Like,
I had
it
a
can
buddy,
happen.
and people just pass so quickly, especially here. I live in Utah, so it's like here in Little Cottonwood Canyon and Big Cottonwood Canyon, hearing the stories of how climbers die here, and it happens often.
Yeah.
It's so, so sad. And I don't know that helmets will, is going to be one of the factors that actually like saves them, but it could save a lot, right? It could,
Yeah.
save you from actually doing some serious damage. But, even last summer, it was like a kid fell up, was where the anchor system was old and it broke off. And then, yeah, and it broke off and he fell. And then another rock came down after him and it hit him and he passed that way. So, I don't know. Anything can happen. So, bottom line, just go get some education around what you're doing. Don't
Right.
just follow your friends. Like, if you
Yeah.
have questions, like, find out the right information. Don't skip
Mhm.
that part. Do not skip that part because you could end up like me, and then you
Right.
won't be able to do any of it. So,
Yeah.
don't and grab friends, and go get educated around it. Like that's super fun.
Mhm.
Go take
Take
some
classes
lessons and
together.
courses and classes together and just make it a fun thing. Because guess what? You're still going out there and you're doing what you love. You're doing exactly what you love, but you're just learning the right way to do it. So
Mhm. I like
that's what I would suggest.
that. Awesome. All right. Well, unless you have anything else to add, I feel like the canyons are calling. We should probably go.
I love it. I'll be there soon. I'm going to follow you there. I'll be on a bike though. I'll be biking or hiking. But
Sweet. You can bike in the After Canyon beers for our hike out.
I would love that. I got to get more information on what you guys are doing. I'll just, meet you guys at the end with the beers and, you know. Anyways, no, this was great. I appreciate you having me on, and I look forward to getting out there again one day. But I'll live vicariously through you and everybody else around me that's still climbing and
Nice.
canyoneering.
Awesome. So, wow, Tina is such a strong trooper for having such a positive outlook on something that changed her life so drastically. I now follow Tina on Facebook, and I do know that she was able to snowboard for the first time since her surgery. So, for the first time in like 2 years, she was able to finally get back on the snow in the mountains, which is her first love. So, I think that is really, really awesome. Maybe at some point she'll give canyoneering a shot again with somebody that has a lot more training and knowledge and knows what they're doing to set up the ropes. Um, on a side note, I did interview the person that she went with. He has asked to remain anonymous, and I am going to be posting a part 2 of this episode with his story. So that'll be coming out in a couple of days. I just didn't want to make this episode super long, so I thought I'd break it up into 2 different episodes. And so you can find out what he learned about the situation as well as why he set the anchor up the way that he did. Please, if you're a beginner looking into this sport, like Tina said, make sure you yourself get some training. Take a class with a friend, have a mentor who is super experienced and not just some random person that you're meeting online for the first time. That was Tina's biggest mistake. You'll find out what the other person's biggest mistakes were in his episode, but there were a lot of mistakes made that day, and fortunately Tina was able to walk again and she didn't lose her life completely. So it has been a super long recovery for her, but she is doing better and she has a super positive outlook. So shout out to her for that, because I think that would be really, really hard. Oh, if you enjoy the music in the background, this is the Handpan Man. I have a link to his music in the show notes. You can find him on Spotify. Also, shout out to Tig Booth. He came up with a super cool intro music to the show. And also, I've never mentioned this before, but my grandkids do The Canyons Are Calling. Let's go, little intro part. It's super cute. Anyway, The Canyons Are Calling now. I gotta go.